Hello, welcome to Cinema Savvy. We have finally arrived at No Time to Die. This is why we set out to do this whole retrospective, and we have officially hit the UK release date for this thing. We've kind of all saw this sort of like scattered, like either at midnight last night or like the day before that. We've all watched the film, thankfully. I mean, we wouldn't be on this review if we hadn't. That'd just be weird. And if you haven't seen from the title already, this is going to be spoiler free. So much happens in this film, so much that we can't talk about, so much that we will eventually talk about when we get to our spoiler-filled discussion. That's going to be in a week's time. But rest assured, we're not going to give anything major away. This is just sort of like our initial opinions. All of us have only seen the film once at this point. This is a film that some of us might even get second, maybe even third viewings before we get into the next thing. And I think maybe with this film that could be needed. There are a lot of sort of like big ramifications with this film. But we're just going to sort of like go in like, just easy brush with this one, just sort of our initial opinions on it. But before we do so, over to George with the socials.
Absolutely, guys. As Chris has already said, do not comment any spoilers.
Yes.
We will block anything. We've got our eyes on the feed. And also, the Bond fans have been great over the course of the year, so we don't want to sort of ruin it for anybody that's been checking out stuff. So please do comment your thoughts, just not spoilery ones. I've got a really good one I'm going to read out in a minute that someone tweeted us as well, because that's the way you should comment, being spoiler free. However, if you are new to the channel, if you don't know what to do, obviously we're a film channel. We've got lots of reviews out, all that kind of stuff. We've been building up to this film, so there's only sort of 24 Bond reviews already on the channel from across the last 6 months, a quiz and a couple of other things. So if you're into Bond, if you're curious, do check them out. There's a lot of things on there. If you're just interested in the Craig era, hey, we covered them as well. So there's a lot to take in. But as I do, comment your thoughts tonight. Hit that subscribe button, because as we said, we have a spoiler review coming. That's going to be up next Tuesday, the 5th of October. So that's going to be the big one. I appreciate it won't be out in America still by then, but we do have some big things coming up on the channel. So it's either going to have to be next week or the end of October. And we can't wait that long to get our thoughts out. So do join us for that. And as I said, if you're from the States or elsewhere, poor Australia's got it in November now. Like I said, just stick with this video for the time being and stay off social media. And also maybe YouTube, because on my YouTube homepage today, there were cam footage. I think it was released in South Korea yesterday, which is one of the most piratable places, and it's already online in shit cam quality. So maybe avoid that too. But as you said, we are here talking Bond. And if you want to find us on our social medias, it's Facebook, Cinema Savvy, Twitter at cinema_savvy, letterboxd.com/cinema savvy. And of course, we have a TeePublic store in the link below. I really want to quickly plug. We're going to have a Bond rankings video out on the 19th of October, a couple of weeks away. We're going to give this film a little bit more time to settle, but not time to die. Poor pun intended. And yes, so we have a kind of plan. A quick comment from Michael Pearson. Evening all. So many trolls out in force on social media. Absolutely. A couple of Bond fans doing fake spoilers on purpose, just on the off chance that someone finds a real one. They can hopefully get it confused. So good luck, I say to you all. But as a matter of order, yes, we are talking No Time to Die. Tayte, hand over to you. Your hype heading into this one to begin with, because it's not exactly been a short-awaited time, has it?
I mean, we've been waiting for how long now for this film? It's just
literal years, hasn't it?
Literal years waiting for this film. It's interesting because my hype for this film has gone up and down over time. Like when it was first coming out, I was really, really stoked for it and stuff like that. And then obviously it got delayed, and there was a chance that it was going to be put out again, and then it got delayed again. It kept on getting pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. And then suddenly, this time around, it seemed like it was going to build up a bit more. And I think what helped with the hype for this film was the fact that we did our kind of retrospective, looking back through all the Bond films and kind of looking through them, talking about them and stuff like that, allowed us to kind of really build that momentum up towards the film and everything like that. So I've been waiting for this film for a very long time, as much as I didn't like the previous films before it. So even though I didn't enjoy maybe Skyfall as much as many people have, and definitely I enjoyed Spectre about as much as everyone enjoyed Spectre, actually, on that account. But this film, I was expecting kind of, it's the end of the Craig era. They're looking to go out on a high. They brought in a director who has not done many films before, but is well renowned for his kind of TV with True Detective. Season 1, did he do? Was it of True Detective? Yeah. They're bringing in excellent actors in as various different members of the team and stuff like that this time around. I was really excited for it. So that was my hype going into it.
Yeah, mine kind of fluctuated over time as well. I mean, I can't even remember when the first trailer for this thing rolled out. Time has been just a weird thing
Star
over the
Wars?
last couple of years, hasn't it?
I think it came out of Star Wars. That's how long ago. We've got to
Bloody
go back to
hell.
it now.
Jesus Christ. I know for a fact the first trailer, I've mentioned this before, it was one of those trailers that I never and still never want to ever see again. I've seen it way too many times. I can quote the whole damn thing. But I honestly think that, obviously doing this retrospective has kind of been invaluable to me as, starting out as not really a Bond fan, kind of a casual fan, I always called myself. But now since, doing this over the last few months, have become a Bond fan. And I think watching them in sequence, you can better see that progression of the series. And I think the hype for me really kicked in definitely when the more recent few trailers came out for it, which I think were much better put together and showcased the film in a much more exciting way than perhaps the first few trailers did. And honestly, when we kind of got to during this retrospective, when once we hit Casino Royale, and it was that sense of, because all the films are so connected, whether you like that or not, like it or lump it, they're all connected and they're in sort of like one big kind of saga of the films. Watching those in progression, in sort of like fairly close proximity with each other, and seeing that progression and seeing it more as like a complete story almost. Casino Royale into Quantum into Skyfall, having a completely different opinion on Skyfall, having probably more of a negative opinion on Spectre, but because, I'm not going to say that people all over the globe, hate Spectre. Of course, it's going to have its fans, but I think certainly within the Bond community, a lot of people were kind of down on that film. So I think we were all waiting for another great Bond film, or hell, just another Bond film. It's been years, too many years since Spectre came out, since we've last had a Bond film. And I think this was almost like the end goal, wasn't it? With, the various lockdowns and everything and films being pulled from cinemas, this one being pulled very late in the game as well. Everything was kind of hinging on this one. So I think it's just nice for the fact that it is released and people can get to go and see it. There's a hell of a lot of screenings. I went to the midnight last night. I think there were like 4 or 5 midnight screenings, and almost a full house in my one. I can't vouch for the other ones. It's nice that people have actually showed up for this thing. And I think a lot of people, whether they like this film or not, because I do think it is, going to divide a lot of people with this film, people are getting to the cinema to go and see it. And it feels like that event again, and Bond's back, which I've seen, on loads of slogans and everything.
Yeah, I think as well, you mentioned the event film. The report last week, I think the Hollywood Reporter said that its UK sales were at the same as Endgame. Now, that's not saying it's going to be as big as Endgame, people, certainly not in America. But that was quite a big thing to hear, because although I'm hyped and many people are hyped, and we know that Bond is an event film in the UK, I was not expecting a form of Endgame comparison. And the big clue that people missed with that as well, say what you want about what the film ended up being, but the big film after Endgame was Rise of Skywalker, which meant that it was outpacing Rise of Skywalker's this is all pre-sale tickets as well. I think that goes to show the status this is. And, we kept joking. We obviously know in September the hype's going to kick in when we get to Casino, and it did. But the marketing campaign for this film has been nothing short of. You cannot turn a corner without seeing Bond somewhere the last few months, the last few weeks. It literally kickstarted. Was it September the 1st? We got 2 new trailers on the same day, and every day there was more adverts. You're watching an F1 race, they've got it plastered on the cars. You get 2 Bond adverts in every F1 ad break now, and it was everywhere. There was no escaping it. There are normal people I know that talked about watching it. Friends back from school messaging me about it as well, and it's been one of them where the hype's been real the last month, and it's just been amazing. We've been able to build up to it over the 6 months that, not to get selfish and talk about our channel, but, there was original plans to 24 in 2 months originally, 3 months?
Yeah.
And
3 a week
we just
or something. It's just...
Yeah, and we'd have probably died during the Roger Moore, the path, but getting that many so close to one another, and whereas this, we had a week to settle with each one, hit the thoughts. And so with you guys, the hype's been amazing, and everyone that's been on the channel. And even seeing the film, obviously I was geared up to go late, but obviously I got to go to the premiere, which I was very fortunate for. And that was just something else. Like Bond, when there's fans there, obviously there's rich people, there's celebrities, all that kind of nonsense, but you could see people getting excited. And it also felt that, that premiere was all over the internet. And we've not had that again in the last few years. When Tenet came out, that was a massive thing for us as Nolan fans. But that wasn't over every media page. Look at the coverage here. Look at this. Look at that. We've not had the event film since Star Wars a year and a half ago, and it's going to be amazing to see how this does when we get the box office results on Monday. My place has shown it 25 times. I'm booked to go tomorrow night with my parents at a low climax, and it was almost sold out on day 2 of the pre-sales. So I'm very curious to see how it goes over, not just for the Bond fans, but the general public. Critics had their screenings as well simultaneously around the world at the same time. And interestingly, the American ones were a lot more positive than the English ones, which I think is normally the other way around with a Bond film. So some really interesting stuff there. But I want to read out a comment. I know Michael Pearson's in the YouTube chat, but I tweeted earlier, I asked off our account, can we get some basic thoughts of people? And I think Michael summed it up best here before we get into it. So much to process. We're all going to be discussing No Time to Die for years. So many themes, Easter eggs, unbelievable surprises emerge without warning. Astonishing performances, heartfelt and affecting, but it felt like classic Bond. How long do I wait to see it again? It's hard to sum up spoiler-free, and I think he's done a better job than anyone could. So I wanted to get that out there. I know that Theo's messaged us as well, but the word I've seen a lot is a lot to process, and we'll be processing that on Tuesday. Again, we're going to tee up that spoiler video. Please don't comment.
No spoilers here.
But I think there's an official hashtag called No Time for Spoilers, which is pretty great because it's got an Aston Martin at the end of it when you tweet it. But
Nice.
let's get into the first big part, shall we? Let's talk about the direction. Karyoji Fukunaga comes into this, who I think is directed one of the best series of TV ever made in history. But you have to specifically say True Detective Season 1. Season 3 is amazing, but he didn't work on 2 or 3. But Season 1 is, if you've never seen it, that basically got Matthew McConaughey back on the map. I think there was it what do they call it, the reconnaissance or something?
The reconnaissance.
He did True. Yeah, he did. What did he do? He did True Detective.
He did
the
Wolf
film
of
Wall
Wall Street.
He did 3 in the same year, didn't it?
Wolf of Wall Street, and then it would have been what's the film around that same time?
Dallas Buyers Club.
Yeah, Dallas Buyers Club.
And he also did Beast of the Nation, which was I think Netflix's first film, where Idris Elba should have been nominated for an Oscar, but wasn't because of the politics of streaming services back then. And I must say, when they sat down, I mean, we aren't even going to talk. We'll do it behind the scenes on the spoiler video as normal, because this is a hell of an entry for this one. But when they sacked Danny Boyle, and I was like, oh, okay, who are they going to bring in at short notice? When Fukunaga's name popped up, I thought, okay, it's the Leonardo DiCaprio meme. You had my curiosity, and I have my attention. And it was really interesting because I thought that's the first American to direct a Bond film. So I didn't even know that. I just assumed one of them would have done it by now. And then it reached the point where in post-production, we hadn't seen much. He was announced to direct the third HBO show. Well, it's not going to be HBO, it's going to be Apple, but the sequel to Band of Brothers in the Pacific. That he had been attached to direct the entire thing, and it's filming now in England. And it was when I got that PR statement, I thought, okay, so they clearly like the action from this Bond film. Like he's clearly done something to have got the blessing from a Spielberg and Tom Hanks type thing. So to me, direction-wise, I had a real high expectation. I don't approach a Bond film with hype on the director. Like Spectre, I went in like, yeah, it's Sam Mendes again. What could go wrong? Which, was very naive when you look back at that now 6 years later. But this is the one where I actually went in like thinking we're going to get a quality film, maybe like a Skyfall that's above a Bond film, how you look at it. And that was a really big thing for me. And the way this is directed, as I said to you guys before we hit live, I think to me, I'm not going to say it's my second favorite or second best, but to me, this is the second best directed film after Skyfall. Doesn't mean it's the best film. I just think the direction and the filmmaking in this, I think is right up there. And that's something I had as a really big expectation heading into the film. I don't know if I'm in a minority of something like that, but I think he was a very ballsy choice that paid off.
Yeah, I think he was also quite a ballsy choice that paid off as well, because he didn't have a massive repertoire of films and stuff like that to go into it. He really only had True Detective and maybe Beast of No Nation. That was kind of the only 2 things that I knew him from, at least before he was brought on board and stuff like that. But I'll go ahead and say it straight out the bat. This is a very well-directed film. Like, the action set pieces are so fantastically directed. And I think it's been a common trend with the modern Bond films that they have been slowly becoming less of the kind of the straight up kind of with churning out an action film as it would have been back in the day and stuff like that. We're churning out a fun flick that people can go along and watch, and it's just going to be bang. You're not really going to care about the direction of filming and stuff like that. You're there for the story more. I feel like the director's lens has kind of, with these modern Bond films, I'd probably say mainly in the Daniel Craig era, has been brought so far forward that, I mean, this film was trying to make an Oscar push, wasn't it? They had a campaign or something like that
Still is.
to kind of pitch towards the Oscars and stuff like that. So that's kind of where we've got to with these films, that they're able to kind of turn them less into that kind of generic action, just generic popcorn, go and watch it for the story. You're watching it for the James Bond thing. And now it's a proper, like, you're not just watching it for that, you're watching it for the actual filmmaking that goes into it. It paid off in Skyfall with the directing of Sam Mendes. It didn't pay off with Spectre with the directing of Sam Mendes. But once again, it has paid off here with Kerry Fukunaga. So, I mean, I'm interested to see who they would go with from this point on. It's difficult because it's Craig's last film, and he's been very open about it beforehand, saying that it was going to be his last film coming into this. So would you stick with the same director moving on or not? It's a very interesting point that I think would be worth discussing at a later date.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen that before, haven't we? With I forget his name now, but with the director of GoldenEye and then the director of Casino Royale, and you see those two films, and they're so different. They're so very fresh reboot, almost like reboot takes on the franchise, and both sort of capture that generation's Bond of what is required from that generation and sort of like the current decade of movie making at that time. This was actually the first Fukunaga thing I ever watched. I did just see it on his filmography, but then I realized he's a writer, he's not a director on that. I still haven't seen Beasts of No Nation. It is on my list of things to eventually get round to, this proverbial list we always keep talking about. And I haven't seen True Detective, so this was the first thing. So I was like, dazzle me, Fukunaga. Like, I haven't seen any of your previous work, and I do think it is a very solidly directed film. I think pacing wise, definitely, especially when you're coming off the bat of Spectre. Christ almighty, this is about 15 minutes longer than Spectre, and it felt a fraction of the length of that film. Spectre, I wanted to die like 45 minutes in. I was done. I was tapped. I was like, Christ, how much longer has this movie got to go on? This one just had so much more energy and drive to the story. And I guess this could kind of extrapolate into sort of like one of my negatives with the film. As a lot of people have already commented already, and you've seen this floating around, this is going to divide so many people. There are story choices in this film. There are tonal choices in this film as well, which are kind of very confusing. And I almost feel a little bit hypocritical saying this because, I've been in the camp saying that, the Daniel Craig films after Casino Royale are very dour and miserable. And it's like, have some fun for God's sake. It's a James Bond film. And I think Spectre was definitely the lowest point in terms of, I want to open my veins while I'm watching this. This isn't fun. This isn't a Bond film. This one definitely sort of recaptures the fun, but if someone really loves that sort of like overly serious take on Bond and sort of like the more haunted character and everything, you do still get like plenty of, ingredients of that Bond. But Craig in this just feels like he's given so much, and whether it's the writing, he feels quippier. It's almost like got a campier tone to it in some parts, mostly down to some of the side characters. We'll talk a bit about like Ana de Armas. There's like a scientist character in the film as well, who's when I was watching it, felt fresh out of like a Brosnan film, which might turn a lot of people off. A lot of people might go, oh, this doesn't feel like this incarnation of Bond. And I kind of fall into both camps because, as I mentioned, like I've been one of those people clamoring for this kind of interpretation of Bond again, just to see Craig and the team have a bit more fun with it. Like, you're making a Bond film, have some fun with it. And you do get that sense of fun from Craig in this one. I think that it's difficult. I'd probably have to go through them again. I think this is probably his best performance of the character, in my opinion, since Casino Royale. I mentioned from Casino Royale, he just had a lot more, whether it was, he was new to the job, he had so much energy and enthusiasm for it. And it shows in Casino Royale, and definitely tonally, that film is, wildly different to eventually when you get to Skyfall under Mendes' direction. But I think Mendes really sort of like pulled it back, and Bond never really felt at the forefront in those films so much. This one, Bond is at the forefront, is exactly where he needs to be. But there are a lot of quippier lines. It almost feels like Craig is emulating like Roger Moore in some parts in this film. And, it is fun, but it is wildly different. So if you are looking for that sort of like continuity within Craig's character, that's been established in the continuity, starting from Casino Royale so far, that might turn a few people off. I'm kind of like middle of the road. I enjoy a lot of the one-liners in there. It's nice to see Craig have that kind of energy. I was kind of watching this going, where's this Daniel Craig been since Quantum of Solace? I wish we'd have had more, interpretations of the character like we get him in this one. It's a shame that it is its last one, because I felt like, oh, we've got it. We've finally got it. Let's go. And obviously, he's been very public that it's his last one he's done. And he's served it for many years, to be fair. So, I think it's
serving by time now, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's a good one for him to go out on as well, because whether he was happy, whether it's like the Harrison Ford thing with Han Solo in Force Awakens, like, I'm going to be great in this because I know that I'm leaving and I don't want to do this anymore. It's my last one. Thank you. Paycheck done. But I don't know, like, you've seen a lot of things in the lead up to this and the marketing and obviously that documentary that came out, and it feels like he's come around to it a bit more now, and he's got that appreciation of what he's brought to the character and sort of the legacy that he's got as Bond, I think.
Yeah, I would really want to quickly bring up this combo Simon. But I enjoyed it. Definitely going to divide fans, and the villain could have been better. We'll get to Freddie Mercury soon. But I had a great time with it. Craig and Elias, who especially were superb. Yeah, let's talk Craig, because I think Chris hit the nail on the head there. That's something I thought when I was watching. I thought, like, this film's really good. But I know this sounds really dumb that Daniel Craig is stealing this film, but as you said, the last few Bond films, Spectre was, let's be honest, all about Christoph Waltz and maybe Mads.
More of an ensemble film. That
Skyfall was definitely about M
and Silver.
Anyone else? Yeah,
we've not, and obviously, I'd even argue Quantum, and this sounds dumb, isn't about Bond. It was a revenge mission. It was personal, but this is the first time, like, I felt like Craig stole the show. I know that sounds really dumb in a James Bond film to say that James Bond stole the show, but that's where we've got to. And I appreciate, the different takes is that, Skyfall was essentially a drama and Bond was in it. But when I came into this, that, it felt like in his performance, he had like the physicality back from Quantum, and he had, as you said, the quickness and more. And the one of the big criticisms of Spectre was that they tried that sort of humor and it didn't work mostly. I know I like the couch gag, and I know the others didn't, but when they are going for that kind of humor, I wouldn't even say it's anything like the couch gag, but when this film wants to throw a one-liner in there, it succeeds. And I'm not going to lie, I think a lot of that is down to, oh my God, I've forgotten her name, who came in and polished
Phoebe Waller-Bridge.
Phoebe Waller-Bridge. I know that he requested for her to be brought on to do the polish of the final draft. I know that she apparently rewrote a lot of the dialogue. And I think you can certainly see there's like some fresh energy that the Bond films, I don't want to say haven't had, but it just felt funner. It felt more enjoyable, and we weren't so dourly depressed by the events that were unfolding on screen like Spectre. And, it does make you think Spectre, if that production really did have its issues. Craig spoke in that documentary about how the injury strapped him back. And we know with this film, he got injured and they delayed filming this time around. He didn't ask to carry on. So there's a lot of variables in play. I think it did help. He probably did Knives Out just before filming started, because you could tell at the time there's live filming that, and there are certain, not moments. I wouldn't say there's any Benoit Blanc moments in this, but he did rock up to the premiere in an incredible salmon jacket, which is something you would expect Benoit Blanc to wear. But I think this is his best performance after Casino Royale. I think he's going to get a BAFTA nomination. I'm not saying that could be deserved. I think that's going to be BAFTA straight away, recognizing him as being James Bond for X amount of years, doing X amount of critically acclaimed films. I wouldn't say he'd get an Oscar for it, or nomination. I mean, not the Oscar itself, but I wouldn't be surprised if this has a big Oscar push. I don't know about nominations, but Craig, I think, at the BAFTA is going to have some kind of acknowledgement, or even if it's honorary or something. But the last few weeks, the whole media circle around it, the junkets, has all been about Daniel Craig, all about his farewell. And, we've said before that this is the first Bond film where the audience has been able to go into it knowing this is the last performance from an actor. And what I would say of this film is the film is centered around the knowledge that it is a last Bond film by an actor playing Bond. And I think what's more important with this Bond than any other is that this has been the only Bond that's had a sequential story. The last thing you'd want is this Bond to have a contract dispute and never come back when they're meant to be connecting it together. What this film does by making it a definitive story in the future, doesn't matter who they go with, they can move on. And I think we spoke this morning, Chris, and I kind of said that when we get to the 70th anniversary in 11 years' time, I think the Craig films amongst the sets are going to look like this really specific character-driven story that we've not been able to have in the history of Bond. So I know we're speaking about this film on the day of the UK release, but I think time is going to be a very important factor with this long term. And we'll discuss it more on Tuesday. But obviously there is another film that has benefited from time that will be brought up a lot. It's not hard to guess, but we're just not going to say it in case it's too obvious.
I'm not gonna go into specifics with this because I know exactly what you're referring to. That is my biggest problem with this film. I'm not going to say which one it is, but there are references, and then you know what this was. There are moments of this film where you know how Star Trek Into Darkness. Now I'm not a massive Trekkie.
I thought
but
this
I
earlier when we
understand
spoke.
why it would piss a lot of Star Trek fans off. Where you know you've got Star Trek Into Darkness, and it's kind of forging its own path in this new continuity started by Star Trek 09, and then you hit a point in that film and it becomes almost like a remake or a complete retread of Wrath of Khan, right? Now, I won't say it's to that degree, but there are elements, there's references that kind of get out of hand for me in this film to another Bond film. And I hated that because I felt like that cheapened that other film. I didn't feel like the emotion from this film was authentic and created by this film. It felt like it was almost manufactured based on your knowledge or based on the emotions generated by that other Bond film that you are then attaching and grafting onto this film to try and achieve the same emotional effect in some parts of the film. And I didn't like that. There's a specific line they reference, and my eyes rolled so far back into my skull. Like there's member berries. This one just hurt. It was almost like I audibly groaned at that. I mean, there's other little quibbles that I have with the film and, you know, big things, which, as we mentioned, we'll talk about next Tuesday. But I think fundamentally that was the biggest problem that I had, that the reference kind of got out of hand towards the end. And I don't know who's to blame for that. It's clearly the writing, but I don't know if that was, you know, Purvis and Wade that came up with that, and that was always their original idea, or if that was, you know, I've forgotten Phoebe.
I doubt it would be Phoebe Waller-Bridger bringing that in.
I personally think it's the producers.
Maybe I don't know who's to blame.
My instinct. Yeah. I think Tuesday's going to be fun to discuss it. I think in what they do. Sorry, I'm treading my edges. I'm scared I'm going to say something.
Yes.
I would assume this would have a feature / reference in any form of commentary or behind the scenes. Maybe I would like to, because I think what they do is something where they would want to discuss that. But yeah, sorry, I just brought up a couple of comments. But no, I absolutely see that. And as we said, we know this is going to be a divisive film. I know that Tayte, you kind of said it. There's 2 or 3 things that don't work, and there are so many things that do work, but the big talking points are so significant to the film, to the series, to the character, that they overshadow. And when we came out of the film, you know, we were on a high and stuff, and I was talking to one of my friends, and you were just kind of compounded there, like, this thing happened, and you forget the other part of the film. You forget big moments that have happened because there's such important moments that you do forget other things happened, and that's how I felt. I've been in sort of deep thought. I was tempted to rewatch it again today before tonight's video, but I thought, you know, I'll wait till tomorrow, give it another day passing over. I want to go in not fresh, I want to go in really switch on, because I think thematically this is one of the richest Bond films. I know we said that about Skyfall. I do think by having the approach of a finality for Daniel Craig, that opened up the doors, and a lot of people are using the word the boldest Bond film. And I kind of said it to Tayte before, but I think this feels like a kind of 70s Bond, but it's been modernized and they've tried to do new things to it. I think that's one kind of way I've kind of seen it with, you know, we know there's like a megalomaniac, a traditional villain, all that kind of stuff, but it's done with the modern eye. And, you know, we know with the stakes of this film from the trailers that, you know, this is something that they've not had to do so far. I'm so scared I'm going to say something. I'm going to hand over to Tayte.
Yeah. I'm going to switch it back on because I will definitely say something accidentally, and I know I will. I'm going to switch back on to Daniel Craig and my kind of thoughts on his performance and stuff like that. because I'm actually in a slightly different camp. I do think it's an okay performance, and a lot of the film, it does come across as kind of a very kind of him putting in everything. You can see the efforts back there. You didn't see the effort in like Spectre at all. He was completely almost. It's that thing where we've been talking through the Bond films, and you get to that film where the Bond checks out, and maybe because he knew that this was going to be his last Bond film, he thought, you know what, I'm going to give it everything. And some points that works out really well. Other points, there's even a line which is in the trailer, which I kind of always think of when I'm thinking of that scene now. And it is almost too hammy. Like it's on par with the kind of the jam line in Living Daylights. That's
Strawberry jam.
Yeah, the strawberry jam line. That's on the same level as hamminess. As that line. I don't know if I can say what scene it is because it's in the trailer, if that helps. But
if it's from a trailer, can you just say it? Because I actually don't know what line you're talking about.
It's the one with him in the car and they're talking about secrets.
We all have our little secret.
Yeah,
we just didn't get to yours yet. Oh God, I don't know what came over me. I'm sorry.
That played in the film. Like, I kind of like zoned in, and I was like, I can't wait for Chris to finally.
I think they used a different take of that line in the trailer compared to what they did in the final film. I think I should know. Like Christ Almighty, I've seen that scene too many times.
But yeah, no, points like that come across him almost overacting. But other points of the film, he has these subtle moments which are so well done. And I think I saw an interview yesterday with Barbara Broccoli, and she was saying this film is a very intimate film. It's a very personal film for a lot of characters involved in the actual main story, and because of that, it feels like with all of the acting performances from the main cast, it does feel personal to them. It does feel like they're giving it their all, and it does feel elevated in those aspects. And I will go back to that point. Like there are 2 or 3 unusual decisions in this film which have sadly kind of take the shine off it for me. But I was saying this beforehand. We went into the review. I could give this film loads of positives, like 30 odd positives for this film, and then 2 or 3 negatives that take that all away. So it is going to be a very divisive film because some people will like those points and it will just excel it up into. I've seen people giving it 5-star reviews. I've seen people giving it 10 out of 10s and stuff like that. And I've seen the other half of the people giving it like 5 or lower. And that's the people who have kind of checked themselves back in the same way that I have with kind of how the film panned out.
Well, let's talk about the villain of this piece as well. So we've got Rami Malek as Freddie Mercury. Yeah, no, let's just run with that. Freddie Mercury's the villain of this thing. He actually looks like he's wearing the same teeth from that film. Maybe that was just me. No offense to Rami Malek. Oh Christ, that's his actual face. It's basically Lucifer Safin, isn't it? Let's be honest from the name. So a villain I was very, very intrigued by from the trailers. We get glimpses of the voice. We get glimpses. One of my favorite shots in the film is where you see in the trailer, the white mask sort of approaching this frosted glass, and you can kind of make out the mask, and it's this very eerie, creepy image. I like Rami Malek's performance. Actually, really like his performance quite a lot in this film. I just don't think we get a lot of him. I would have loved to have seen more scenes with him. I don't feel like he was developed well enough to sort of be on the upper echelons of like a Silver that we got in Skyfall or something, or even kind of a Lashif from Casino Royale. I still think, Mads Mikkelsen in that film is still more memorable than Rami Malek in this one. And I can't go in depth into it, but I think one of the problems that I had as well is that there's various relationships that are mentioned that the character has with another character, which I thought they could have mined a little bit more or developed a little bit more on. That was kind of murky and they didn't really commit to that. And then another thing is the villain's basic overall motivation. It seems like it's very clear from the beginning what his motivation is. That is kind of, you could say, completed by more or less the halfway point of the film, which then leaves the rest of his motivation confusing for the rest of the film. That is so cryptic, but if you've seen the film, you might know what I mean. It's almost like he achieves what he wants to achieve, and then they kind of didn't know what to do with the character, but we still needed like a villain to have this huge, like elaborate Bond plot that is ultimately what we get. That being said, the big plot that we get at the end of the film felt so classic Bond, and it was great. And it's, this is what I'm talking about right now. I don't know if sort of like the ins and outs of what the plan was, but I've seen some people mention already, was the film delayed because of the subject matter? I don't know. Probably not. You know, if that was, but we've seen things before, haven't we? We saw Falcon and the Winter Soldier, where there's rumors that there was like a huge subplot in that film pertaining to something like a virus or vaccines, and then they removed that based on sort of what's been going on recently. I don't know if that's the case. I think it was just like a whole financial thing. I think, you know, if we release the film now, no one is going to the cinema to see this film, and we don't want a Bond film to bomb. So I think that's the ultimate reason why it is. I think it's just kind of a strange coincidence, really. But even in the context of that, the thing in this film is so wildly different. It's kind of ridiculous, and you have to be on board with it. I'd say it's probably even more of a stretch from a lot of the other things in the previous Daniel Craig films. It is getting towards that more, as you mentioned, like 70s Bond. This feels like a plan, a more high-tech, a more sort of like scientifically modern Bond plan that you would get from, you know, something from like Moonraker or something like that. But I kind of liked that. I think it just, the motivation with Rami Malek's character didn't really translate for me in the ending. And he was a really, you know, visually interesting. His performance, his presence, the way he carried himself was all really cool. And I wanted more of that. I wanted to get to know him. It's not even in a way where he's kind of left mysterious. You get, you know, sort of like elements to the character, but nothing really came together cohesively for him. So I'm not going to say he was bad. I think he was very, very good. I thought his performance was fantastic. Just needed that little bit extra to sort of get him like into a well-rounded character for me, I think.
Yeah, I'm going to bring up a point that Tom Butler said to me straight away on Tuesday when we spoke. And he said, this film is what he thinks Spectre wishes it had been, or what they wish Spectre to have been. And when you talk about the villain, I think there is no better one line from what Tom said then, because we have a traditional megalomaniac. Is that a term? I think it's a term.
Yeah.
You know, we know from the trailers, you know, millions of people will die. And I know we spoke earlier, that's people saying that Daniel Craig's not had to have a Saving the World type film yet. And it's natural progression. And also it's the big bombastic ending as well that you kind of want. And, you know, bringing in the Bond villain casting is always fascinating. Doesn't matter what era you're at. You look at some of the actors that have played them over the decades, whether it's been sort of critically acclaimed actors. I mean, I always think to Renard in Was Not Enough, coming off the back of Trainspotting and all that stuff. You've got a wildly different character, but you instead 99 why he was hot on the heels to get him in as a Bond villain. And, you know, post Bohemian Rhapsody, and I'm laughing because I don't think age is helping that film at all. It's enjoyable. It's a fun watch. Shouldn't have won a lot of the awards it did. Sorry, but the timing of bringing Rami Malek in was perfect. Now I've not seen iRobot, and a lot of his fans say that's the best thing he's done. And I've heard it's
Mr. Robot.
Superb.
Mr.
Robot. Sorry, iRobot's
iRobot's the great Will Smith film from the 2000s.
I always get this. Yeah, I really enjoyed it, and from the trailers, he was so ambiguous that. You know, well, what's he planning? What's he going to do? And I think he's very threatening from the scenes we have of him. He has a certain presence that Silver had, and I'm going to compare them. So Silver is a better villain. I just think he has more to do, and he's more centric to the story.
I think his motivation is just clearer. Like it's a consistent motivation through and through, isn't it? With that film,
it's a simple
and give him more screen time, I'd say as well.
Yeah. There's no and one really good thing. We had a comment on the Spectre video actually this morning, and someone had a massive rant. I think it was Barton Fink's his name. Incredible reading, and I think he summed up saying the nonsense about the cuckoo from Spectre is them trying to do the rat story from. Skyfall, which I never clocked, which it actually basically was. So we don't get any big defining, you know, animal type thing in this film with Rami Malek.
Probably more plants in this one, probably, isn't it? We've moved on from animals. We're going to the foliage now, I think.
Definitely. I really enjoyed what we got of him, but I think we were maybe not missing it, but I think because the villains have overshadowed Craig in the last few films, I wonder if they just wanted more Craig, because he's very ambiguous. Even when you get to the end of the film, his character has a certain presence still, but I don't know if he maybe needed a scene or two more. I would say that he is developed more than I thought he would be. And if you've seen the film, you know what I mean by that, that the placement of a traditional Bond moment is at a different time. We'll talk about that on Tuesday, but certainly, you know, what we got from the trailers with I don't know what the Japanese masks are called. It's like a traditional type thing, isn't it?
Yeah. I wish we'd have got more of that, you know?
Yeah, and you can buy one for only £600 at the Bond store, the joke that never stops running. Real quick comment by Michael Pearson. Creepy and unpredictable, seeing him less added to his mystery, some wonderful lines. What I will say, there is a face-to-face confrontation, which is in the trailer, which is phenomenal. And I wouldn't say it's just two people acting against one another, but there's some really good things this film sets up. And going back to what you said, Chris, about the runtime, it's 2 hours, 43 minutes, and it flies by. It doesn't stop, and that was, I mean, the first thing, we had a strict deal with, I was going to message you a thumbs up or a thumbs down when I came out, nothing more, and I sent you it's a yes from me from X Factor, and then the next day the message was, is the runtime all right? And I was like, yeah, like it was. And this is what's amazing, the film does have one or two major issues or talking points, but one of it ain't the runtime. And I think Rami Malek adds to that we're not spending too long with him. Maybe we're even spending too short with him, but I can't imagine him being placed in other scenes. I'm just trying to scan it in my head and not say anything out loud because I'm quite scared.
I was watching the film and thinking, going into it mindful that it was going to be the longest Bond film at a whopping 2 hours 43, and I was watching it thinking, could I cut this scene? And as the film went on, I was like, even now I'm like, I don't think I could cut anything. I'd maybe have to see it like a few more times, but I think it might be the right amount, for the runtime. It's the length it needs to be. I think it being the last one as well. I mean, you could argue, we've had, Brosnan's last one, we've had Dalton's last one, and all the other Bonds that have come before, and none of them have needed to be 3 hours. But I don't know. Thinking about this one, I didn't have a problem with the runtime or the pacing. It moved great, and it just goes to show that it's not necessarily about the runtime. If you've got a sufficient amount of time to tell that story, that's fair enough. Pacing and editing is key, and something's always happening in this. It kept my interest, and I mean, that was one of my biggest concerns going into it. Was definitely, this film need to be this long? And I mean, I didn't have a problem with it.
I will say on Safin and kind of Rami Malek as his character, he absolutely demands the screen when he's on it.
Yeah.
He is a fantastic actor. I know he's tied into Bohemian Rhapsody and there's jokes behind that film and stuff like that. But he is actually a fantastic actor and played a very, very good villain as well. And yeah, I think they should have had more of him, a little bit more of him. I'm counting the scenes in my head. I'm not gonna. It's not many scenes that he's actually engaging in the actual scene. But when he is on screen, he is either terrifying or so just kind of eloquent with his words and stuff like that that it's like skin crawly. It's like you kind of sat back in your chair going, Jesus, this villain is just absolutely insane, but it works so well. It's a proper throwback to those old school villains, and I genuinely think that's what the Craig films were kind of missing. You almost got there with Silver as like a throwback, and Lashif kind of was like a modernized version of that. You kind of twisted on and stuff like that. You haven't had that other than that, even down to like the henchman.
Could have said twisting his balls.
Yeah. yeah, but at the same time, like this film tries to become a lot more traditional in some senses, and I think the villain is one of those areas.
I think he brings like a good physicality to it as well, like just the way he moves. There's moments where it almost feels like he's quite hunched over, which adds to sort of like the creepy kind of awkward factor to him. But then there's like other moments where he's almost like walking around. It's like, oh god, what's the name? The Thanos henchman from Infinity
Ebony Moore.
Yeah, when he's like walking around like this, and he feels quite graceful and like
gliding,
how he's moving.
Yeah,
almost. Yeah, so it was a really, really good performance, I thought. Let's sort of like we'll move on to the Bond girls. This is going to be. It's not really going to fit the mold of our previous retrospective reviews, where we split it into the sections. That's going to be probably in our spoiler review among, many other talking points that we're going to have. So we're going to keep it kind of loosey-goosey with this one, but we do need to talk about the Bond girls with this one. And we'll start with Madeline Swan, who's definitely sort of like the main focus, I would say, of the film in terms of the Bond girls. Obviously, reprising the role again, you've got Léa Seydoux from Spectre. And once again, I just really don't care for her character. She objectively gets more to do in this film. She's including a lot more drama in this film, but I could not describe to you her character, her personality, her traits. She's just kind of very... I couldn't even describe, just very blank as a character for me. She's just, there's not really much to describe about it. Now, in comparison, you've got, Anna de Armas, who's who's introduced in this film. Barely in the film, I will say that. I think pretty much just what you see in the trailer is pretty much more or less all you get from her. But although she's not in the film all that much, the energy and personality she brings to her character is great. And I kind of wanted more of that. I mentioned earlier that her character, Anna's character, it's almost like akin to a Brosnan type era Bond girl, I would say. Some might feel like she's out of place and the character type doesn't really fit the Daniel Craig era, and I can absolutely see that. But she was an absolute breath of fresh air for me in this one. And, I know that these Bond films are all tightly knit together and, you've got to continue certain things and certain characters. And that's why we get Madeleine Swan coming back from this one. And you get a lot more with her character as well. It sort of goes a lot more into her past. And you think you get elements in Spectre, it goes into it a lot more in this one too. But I really wanted more of Ana de Armas's character, whether she, cropped up a little bit more, had more to do in the story, I guess. She was just a lot of fun. And I think it's a shame. I think if these films had gone in with the separate episodic approach, I think she'd have been good enough to stand on her own as the main Bond girl for this film. As it is, I know they can't do that because they are kind of tethered, almost like a little bit like a ball and chain with it being that complete story, whether you like that or not. But it's a shame. And also, just throwing in there as well, if we're talking about the Bond girls, if you will, you've got Lashana Lynch's character as well, who was, alongside the runtime, was kind of my biggest concern. People were very vocal on the internet going, oh, brandishing the pitchforks. And I was kind of there a little bit, but I was remaining hopeful with the film. Talk about, getting woke and stuff. Bond's getting woke. We're going to have the first female Bond. And she was all over the trailers and she was the new agent in place of Bond because, surprise, surprise, Craig starts this film off again retired. Big surprise there. I mean, that's not even a spoiler. That's just how all of these films go at this point. I thought she was fantastic and I thought she was utilized in the film very well. Very quickly, all of my fears were kind of allayed with this character. And we have seen agents in the Bond films, right? There was Agent Triple X was one. There's many more who I'm blanking on now as we look at the other films, but she was used the right amount. She didn't overshadow Bond. She didn't talk down to Bond. She felt an equal to Bond, but was utilized in the story very well. She didn't sort of like take the limelight away from Craig. As we said, Craig is very much at the forefront of this film. And I thought as a new character, she had a great personality. She did have some great back and forth and some banter with Bond and some of the other characters too. And she was very capable, but it wasn't done in that sort of try hard way that a lot of modern cinema's going with a lot of these types of characters. I thought they handled her character very well. So that was one of my biggest concerns going in and didn't have a problem with it in the final film at all.
Yeah, Lashana Lynch was amazing. So it does make me think how much was underused in Captain Marvel, and obviously, not to throw in a spoiler in there for not for Bond, for one of the Marvel shows, but obviously she died after Endgame off screen, so they can't exactly bring her back, which is a shame. But she made it her own, and there's something to be said recently where they asked Daniel Craig, and this is what does my head in. I'm going to get into this because we knew from day one, Bond had retired, and they'd said everywhere Lashana Lynch was playing the 00 that came in to replace him, as story puts it. But every time there's been an interview, people are crying out, are we going to get a female Bond? Are we going to get this? And they ask it every film, and I understand, the fans aren't asking it; it's the journalists.
It's clickbait.
They're trying to get the reactions. They're trying to get the internet stirring, get the pot stirring. It happened this week when they asked Daniel Craig, and he's a really eloquent point. Summed up, said that we need to create roles for characters. Why give them a Bond role when we can write them to be a Bond character? And it sort of hits the header. And Barbara Broccoli said it for years. Barbara Broccoli's always said, why would I make a Jane Bond when I can just write a character to be in James Bond at that level? And I think Lashana Lynch is that. As you say, Chris, she's an equal to him. There's no on-screen battle. They've got great chemistry with each other as well. It's a really interesting take. And also, as far as it goes, we don't really see spies do spy work in the Bond films. And I'd say they actually set her up as a spy, which is something quite rare for a spy franchise. But I really enjoyed her in this. And I want to kind of add Madeleine Swan's obviously the big one that, I wasn't a fan of her in Spectre. I think it's in the video last week that they really underused layers to do. And I think she was a hell of a lot better in this. I think she had better material to work with. I think the story was more naturally tailored to her. She's still, she's not a Vesper or a Tracy.
The chemistry, there's something about the chemistry that doesn't land with me.
And that's it. Like in Spectre, it was such a cold performance from Craig. Whereas in this one, it's Craig's performance. I'm not saying he was bad in Spectre, but the script allowed them to get more chemistry with each other. And I was interested by what they did with the pair of them. And I did think it worked better. We knew we were teeing up something in the trailers, but she felt more like a femme fatale in this than she had been in the last film, where you were mysterious. You didn't know where she had an allegiance to or where she fitted within the plot. But when it sort of clicked, I think she's actually quite a very interesting character. I don't want to say full credit. I don't know, if that was the producers or Peyton Wilson, or if that was Fukunaga or Phoebe Waller-Bridge or all of them. I think to bring back Madeline Swan and put her in a better role, I was really impressed by, because that was one of my big concerns. I thought, I'm obviously not going to talk spoilers or anything, but when you get characters, you think, oh, they're just going to be the trailers, and that's them done and dusted. It wasn't. She did have a role in this film, and I'm quite grateful for it. And I think, to me personally, it's a bit of a redemption. Whether there are people that like Spectre, that's absolutely fine. Obviously, I'm not in that minority, but and Anna Diarmas. Where do you start? You're both right. She should have been used more. She's very, very good in the film. You could argue, if the film wasn't 2 hours, 45 minutes, she could have stolen it. But she certainly leaves such a memorable impression. And again, if you've seen Knives Out, her and Daniel Craig already have great chemistry with each other. And that carries on. He asked for her to be cast in this film. I don't know if they wrote the role specifically for her. I feel like they have. I think it's Phoebe Waller-Bridge all over that. But she was a breath of fresh air. And I think Christy at the end there, this was an episodic Bond film, should be in the film completely. But with it being a sequential ending, you can understand why she didn't sort of stick around. And I kind of think that's where the sort of the modern Bond films are going now. We spoke about issues with some of the old Bond films where, you get this character, and then for no reason at all, they're suddenly sleeping with Bond. And it's like the plot must have you two get together. One thing I'll say about the Craig era is that, even back with Camille in Quantum of Solace, they never made it so that awkward random. Was it Fiore's Only was the worst one? Big revenge mission, and then it's like let's just get it on for the final second because we need to do it in a Bond film. So, what I would say about the writing of this, the female characters, is that it was done a lot better than previous Bond films, and I'd go so far as to say that I've seen a lot of fans online before this film came out saying they love Phoebe Waller-Bridge to write a Bond film. Now, I've not seen Fleabag, so I've heard very good things about it.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be very curious, and not to diss on the writers, but they've been doing these films since since The World Is Not Enough. And I think if there's ever change of an era, whether you want to bring someone on a film by film basis, if the film's going to go back to being episodic, we'll speculate on that in the future. But I would be very curious to see Phoebe Waller-Bridge write a Bond film, just because there is a clear sign of her taking part to the screenplay and improving it. So that's how I feel with these. I think it was, as far as an ensemble goes, I think they were all superb, and no one had too much time on screen. Really quickly before I get to Tayte, big problem with Spectre was, Chris, you say side quest, don't you? It's the perfect time. None of that, and one of the things that really made me laugh. I don't normally look at critic reviews, but obviously I'd seen the film, so I didn't. I saw someone complain that there wasn't enough of the supporting cast, the people that play letters, that people that play characters that are a letter. And I thought, well, no, like, you don't need to have MQ or Moneypenny be a subplot, because we had it didn't work, and that's where the pacing problems went. They're in the film for the perfect amount of time, as are the other Bond girls. So I really wanted to get that tangent out there. I'm sure we'll get.
And they reinforce Bond's story as well. Like, they're a key part in aiding him in what he's got going on. It's not a separate story, kind of connected, but kind of its own thing. Like, they've got their villain to take down. Bond's got his one, and the two kind of come together at the end. No, this is everything's going towards the same goal. They're just kind of chipping in and helping him. And it kind of reminds you of the old structure, doesn't it? It's like they're functional to the story. They don't derail it, and we don't, spend overly too much time with them. But I think you get the right amount of screen time with them in the film. I didn't think they really needed to be in it less or more, to be honest. I thought it was just fine.
Quickly back on Phoebe Waller-Bridge. Very interesting. She is actually co-writing with Donald Glover a Mr. and Mrs. TV show.
She's left it.
She's left it.
Yeah, it was on the news last week. I know. They did that
that's
really
a shame.
cool announcement video for no reason.
Oh, that's a shame. Saying that, she is also going to be starring in an Indiana Jones film. I genuinely think if they keep her around for the writing, I think it could. I don't know if it's ever. I don't think it has happened before in a Bond film. She could write and also feature in a Bond film. And I think she has absolutely left a mark in kind of media and stuff like that. Because Fleabag's fantastic. I would highly recommend it for everyone. You can absolutely tell that all of the puns in this film were written by her. You can absolutely tell every single last one of them.
There are some cracking puns in this one. We're going to save them for the
well,
in all honesty, in all honesty, I need to remember the puns. Like that's the thing. Like I'm not going to be that guy that starts, doing notes on my phone in the middle of that cinema. But we will go into some of the puns next week. I think when we have that more sort of like structured retrospective kind of format. I think for this film. Let's talk about some.
Sorry, I was just going to go on to the Bond girls very quick because I was going to move on to just kind of the female print that's been on Bond in recent years, which has been absolutely fantastic. Because in this film, you have three very kind of, I don't even know if you could call all of them Bond girls. It's three kind of female leads in the Bond film, which all have very different roles, which all have an amazing part to play, which is so fantastic to see in one of these films. So you've got Madeleine Swann, who is much improved on from Spectre. I'm not sure if that's just because Spectre's a terrible film or if that's because her performance has been given more. She's kind of almost a bigger plot point in this film than she was in the last film, and she was massive in the last film. So it's really interesting to see how they've developed her character on from there. Ana de Armas, just phenomenal. She's been fantastic in everything that she's been in. Oh, we've lost George.
He's just messaging me saying that his internet's gone. He'll be back
That's
in a
fine.
second.
I'll continue. She's absolutely fantastic in everything she's been in. Like, what can we say? And because she was able to build up that chemistry with Daniel Craig before in Knives Out, you can tell immediately the second they interact on screen, it is just so fantastic. And they're having fun with it. And Daniel Craig's smiling again, which you don't really see that often in these films, because he's a miserable bastard in these films. And then you have the new 007. I said this beforehand, like Lashana Lynch, I could easily see like her character Nomi being the new 007. If they wanted to just continue it and call it the 007 franchise, I could easily see her stepping into it. I know they obviously, I don't think they will.
Don't agree with that, but yeah.
I don't think they will, but just from her character, she is that agent. She's that style of agent. And whether they do it as like a kind of spin-off and have it as part of kind of her doing her own missions in the same universe with the same team and stuff like that, or whatever, I think she's a fantastic actress, and she's done such a good job here that she has convinced me that she is that good of an agent. Not saying take on the Bond title, but I am saying that character should be kind of seen more if they are continuing it in this direction.
Or just give her like a similar role in another film. I don't want to see her as James Bond, I don't
not
think
as James Bond.
But...
You could do it. I mean, in this film, they do it as her being kind of, she is 007. She's just taken over kind of the code name without actually taking the James Bond title. But I could easily see her continuation, especially when we've got films. I think Atomic Blonde, we didn't give it enough credit at the time for what it did for that kind of style of cinema and stuff like that. Because on reflection, Atomic Blonde is actually, it basically predicts all the films that followed it and stuff like that, with that kind of female lead style of action and stuff like that. So,
well, should we talk about the action as well? Because I mean, that's like a big focal point with like all the James Bond films is like, what are the set pieces in this thing? I don't know about you. It felt like they were kind of light on a lot of the set pieces in this one. I think you open with probably your biggest one. Just in terms of, that sort of epic, sprawling, exotic location kind of thing and utilizing the environment and everything like that. I feel like you kind of open with that one. I'm not going to say which one it is because, you see it in the trailer, but you don't know which order the shots from the trailer are actually going to play in the film. So I think it opens with its biggest one, but I don't think any kind of hit the heights as you do from like, whether it be the opening scene from Skyfall or, the car chase in Rome from Spectre even. I think there are better Bond films out there. The crane stuff in Casino Royale. I think there are better, more impressive action set pieces in Bond films overall. This one's kind of lacking in that. And I did see that on initial reviews going into this thing, sort of like the middle of the road reviews were commenting that there's not really much action in there. I think the action that's in the film is very well done, but whether it's a direction thing or whatnot, or story wise, I don't feel like you get the action sort of like hits those epic sprawling heights as you have in some of the previous ones. There's also certain elements as well with like the villain's lair, and you get elements in the trailer, but look fantastic as like a really kind of unique looking location. But I don't feel like they utilized the locations and the sets as well as they could have done. I would have liked to have been sort of like enveloped in those environments a little bit more than we initially got. They look pretty on screen, but I just don't think they use them to their full capacity. Instead you get a lot of staircases or kind of darkly lit rooms or corridors, and I don't feel like you get that sort of scope that you did with like Mendes's films, or even, as I mentioned, like Casino Royale, for example. So it's kind of lacking in that department. But that being said, the action that is in the film, although it might not have sort of like hit the heights of some of the previous ones, is very well shot. It is very well directed, and it does the job of what an action scene is meant to do.
We back, George.
No idea what's happened. I'm now running off my hotspot, so it's a good thing.
Nice.
No idea. Yes, are we talking the set? Sorry,
we're talking action.
Yeah,
action. My word. I think this has some of the best Bond set pieces, and I think the action. Sorry, I've missed what you guys have said, so apologies if I end up saying the same thing you guys have, but it felt quite real, and it's a really dumb term to use. Like, yes, you get your explosions, your gadgets, and all that kind of stuff, but the physicality of Craig in this film, we always say, like the murderer in Skyfall, he's a bit older. In Spectre, it's just ticking the buttons, and you get the great fight with Batista on the train. But in this film, it feels, I guess, the first time since Brosnan, almost a one-man army, that we get him with machine guns, with pistols, attacking bases, and we've got a lot of that in the trailers. And you look at this Bond, and he actually feels like not just like a killer, but a soldier and someone that is gonna do it. And I think that's reflected in the action. There's a moment in the trailer when the Range Rover flips in the forest, and he's just got the machine gun straight away on the driver, and there's no pissing about, no over elaborate scheming, that kind of thing. And it just felt like Bond's come in to do a job. And I think this comes down to Fukunaga, where when you've got such a, I guess you could say, personal story with Daniel Craig in this film, that this is the Craig film, you want him to deliver on the action, whether it's fist fights, whether it's with guns, with the cars. We've got that in the trailer as well, with the stunts. I think the action was really well done in this film. And also Lashana Lynch as well. She is phenomenal in the action set pieces. She's very physical. And they gave her moments, as they also did with Ana Diarmas, who did it all wearing a dress, which was even more incredible. So I think this is a film that's got the action right. It does feel at times, as I said, as I mentioned, a bit of a Brosnan, more traditional, going to the megalomaniac base. But, I then look back to Spectre from last week, and we go to this incredible base to look at a couple of computer screens to learn about knowledge and cuckoos and things like that. And I think you just wanted a bit of an action. I wouldn't say it's an action film, but I think the action delivers, and I think there's enough there. There's enough drama mixed with action that, we criticize Quantum for being 90% action, no story. Whereas Casino is more story than action. You get the set pieces, but this one is quite, I don't want to say consistent, but when you're getting it for an action scene, they're shot well. They don't feel the same. You feel like you're getting different, when you got the forest in a car chase versus people on a motorbike or fist to fist or running around shooting guns. I think the action was very well directed. And sort of jumping back to what I said earlier about Fukunaga doing the new war series, I'm incredibly excited, because that's all going to be about the RAF. And obviously, I'm not going to lie, we don't get any RAF battles in this, so I'm very intrigued to see what he wants to do. But I absolutely love the action in this.
Yeah, the action in this film felt more intimate than it did in previous films. I've used the word intimate a lot tonight. I feel like this film was kind of, it was made to be kind of that personal kind of end to this kind of cycle and this story and stuff like that.
I think the action serves the story maybe more so than just being, hey, we've got an action set piece.
Correct.
It's like, what is this? Is this serving the story?
Like every kind of action set piece feels not only deserved and earned, but also it propels the plot on. Whereas previous action set pieces in Bond films are there just for action set piece. They're just there to just be kind of, oh, Bond's doing cool stuff now and stuff like that. Even some points in some Bond films where literally there'll be a side plot where the action set piece is just there so that people don't like get bored and fall asleep. With this film, it flows really, really well. I'm not going to name the scene and stuff like that. I'm going to say there's a scene towards the end of the film where he's in a kind of tight, confined space, and it is just so well shot. It is incredible. Just that entire kind of scene, and it goes on and on. You're like, wow, he's still going. Oh my God, he's still going, and stuff like that. So really, really well shot, really, really well done. And once again, the action really well paced within the story. You didn't feel like there was parts of the story where, oh, we should really have an action set piece coming up soon or something like that. It just flowed so nicely. The action set pieces arrived just when you're expecting them to and didn't outstay their welcome.
Yeah, I'd say the action's balanced to the stakes. It's not something we really spoke about before, but there's never a set piece that's too big for what's happening on screen. I don't know if that sort of makes sense, but you can see in some films there might be an over elaborate car chase for something that shouldn't really be a thing, or an airplane sequence for no reason at all. Whereas this is, the moment in which this scene is taking place, the action makes sense for where you're at, for what's happening, and as the stakes increase across the film, as do those set pieces and the stakes. So I thought the action really compensated the drama and the story they were trying to tell.
And I don't think any of the action set pieces, and I occasionally have this with some of the films. I even kind of had this with Casino Royale to some extent. And I mentioned that it's a phenomenal sequence, but you've got like the opening parkour scene where it gets to the point just for me where it's like, okay, this is going on a little bit too long, but then it ends. I didn't have that with any of the action set pieces in this one. Like, they didn't feel overly long or drawn out or anything like that. They felt all the right length they needed to be, essentially. And as I said, it goes back to like the editing choices, like thinking, could I remove any of this from the film? And no, it's all exactly where it needs to be. It feels very tightly written in that regard. That being said, not going into specifics, I do think they could have trimmed the beginning of the film. We'll talk more about in terms of like structure and everything when we get to the spoilers, but that the beginning did feel a little bit long in some respects. A film's is only as good as its music as well, and we have Hans Zimmer finally in the Bond family now. It's only took 25 films, but here we go. Now, Hans Zimmer, obviously one of my favorite film composers of all time. George, this. I think we first see each other in the flesh in person at Hans Zimmer Live? Was that
it might have been. Was it the Birmingham one?
Yeah, I think
it was definitely one of the first ones. Yeah, it was the Birmingham concert, wasn't it?
So Hans Zimmer, has a special place in both of our hearts in that respect. Now, phenomenal composer. I will say, like, his work as of late, whilst not terrible, whether it's the Inception bombs or something, I was hoping it wouldn't be like a carbon copy score from either The Dark Knight or Inception or something like that. I wanted it to be its own thing and to have melodies and everything like that. And I've got to be honest, this is probably the best score we've had since David Arnold with Casino Royale. I'm going to rank it that highly. Like, some people might be, fond of the music. I know that Arnold did Quantum of Solace, but we mentioned in that the soundtrack, whilst not bad, it's kind of in the background. And I very much had that as well with Thomas Newman's score in Skyfall and Spectre as well, where you might have the occasional song where it stands out a bit, but mostly it's that very surface level kind of score. Hans Zimmer's in this one was a score that I was actually conscious of and was listening, and there are moments where you get that No Time to Die melody coming through in the film, and I always love when composers do that. It feels like in some aspects as well he really captures that kind of Barry sound as well, that sort of like grand Bond score that you expect. The Bond themes playing 10 to the dozen in the film. There's some really cool variations on the Bond theme that I haven't heard it played in that way before. And there are moments as well, and this is as loose as I'm going to mention it, where entire musical suites and entire leitmotifs are lifted from other Bond films as well, which are the elements that I'm not too keen on. I thought that was a little bit of a step too far. Don't blame him. That's from the script. If those lines are there, you've got to have the music to back that thing up. But great score as well. And, I'd love to see Hans Zimmer come back to do more. But if he is going to be a one and done with this for sort of Craig's last one, it is a powerhouse score to sort of like to cap off that Bond, that Daniel Craig Bond era. And also it's quite nice in that he does bring back things, like you might get themes from the Craig eras that you remember, like maybe Vesper's theme might be in there, but he also puts his own stamp on it. And there are elements, especially towards the end, where it does kind of tend into the Dark Knight kind of sound. And, we'll talk about that in spoilers, but there are certain elements at play that I do think lend a very good comparison to elements from the Dark Knight or the Dark Knight Rises. Stuff like that's unavoidable, but I thought it was a really strong score. And to the point where I was watching the film going, I can't wait to listen to this score in isolation. And, it has been quite a long time since I've done that, where, some scores might come out and I might sort of cherry pick songs here and there, like the main key ones. I want to listen to this score beginning to end on its own again. And it's been a while since I've done that with a film, I think.
Yeah, and as well with Zimmer as well, it's one of them that if you look at what he's done recently, there's not a lot, because Dune is his baby. And that is the soundtrack that will be unleashed upon. Well, it's already online, but I can't listen to it before I see it. From everything I've heard about his score for that's been his dream score. Everything's gone into that. And he came on very late to the Bond franchise. Did he get announced for like Bond and Wonder Woman like really quickly?
Yeah.
Like, by the way, I've just done Dune. Can I squeeze anything in? Like, that's how I felt. And I won't say I was nervous, but when he got announced for Bond, I was like, I'm buzzing. It's Hans Zimmer doing Bond. But it came, I want to say it was like last January time, only a couple months before the film came out. And I was like, oh, okay, like, is he going to have much of an input? Is he going to be to the basics type Hans Zimmer thing? But no, this has got him written all over it. He plays homage at the right times. He's not, a lot of people have a really valid criticism that the Craig films like to hide from the theme. And I think he doesn't hide from it at all. He creates a new song, which I'm very, very interested to. You guys all know what I mean, who have seen the film. I'm very curious to listen to that outside of the film. A very big moment in the film. And I kept joking, it's the man on the piano on fire gif. That was certainly Hans Zimmer's approach to one of the big moments. But because you kind of said there that he used the Billie Eilish theme a lot, and the song to come in the process so late and be able to get that soundtrack coming across. Because he obviously helped do the score as well to the main theme. We always joke that, the moment the guitar riff comes in on that theme, you can tell it's Hans Zimmer. I think he did it live at the Brits with her before COVID and all that kind of stuff. So this is
it is a theme that has grown on me as well. I do want to just throw that in there quickly. Like we'll talk more about the theme song next week, but the Billie Eilish one, I've been listening to it on repeat. It's not quite up there for me, but maybe I was a bit too harsh on it before. I think it is. Once you see it with the title sequence, once you hear that Hans Zimmer score variation on that theme, I do think it kicks it up a notch a little bit as well.
I go in the opposite direction.
Oh,
which
really?
Is really
okay.
Weird. I think the song is better in isolation than the kind of title sequence they go with in the actual film. But that's my personal kind of choice. I think the song was better when I didn't have a visual thing to go with it. But I will say the score of the actual song is fantastically used in so many different ways. Yeah. Normally, it's like you'll hear one orchestral version of the song. Not even the full version of the song orchestral, just a quick riff or just something, a quick kind of like, oh yeah, that was the theme song. We're just going to remind you that the theme song's part of this film. And now suddenly, like in this film, there's like 3 or 4 different versions of that No Time to Die theme that come in throughout the film, which is really, really well done. And it's so odd that like, even though this is Hans Zimmer's first film or first film with Bond, you can definitely tell it's Hans Zimmer theme, but you can also very easily tell it's a James Bond kind of score at the same time. It's a really odd one where you're listening to it and you can immediately pinpoint, oh yeah, that's Hans Zimmer, and oh yeah, that's a Bond theme at the same time, which you'd never expect.
And I'll say just really quickly, and this is so vague, I'll probably bring this up again next week, that orchestral variation of No Time to Die, I kind of wish that had been used in place of perhaps some other music that might be used in the film. I'm just going to leave it at that. I think that would have sort of like helped it on that one. Find its own identity, and I think it would have worked very well. I think it's Hans Zimmer's done the franchise proud. Absolutely, great score, I think.
And we're getting Dune soon. I keep saying this is the score I've waited a very long time for. Let's not hide from this. He didn't take a Nolan film because that's how important Dune is for him. I mean, I love Ludwig Göransson, superb Tenet score, but if Zimmer's declining Nolan to do Dune, then I've got some mad. I think we've got more expectation from the soundtrack than actually do for the film. Don't know if I've ever had that before. Maybe X-Men Dark Phoenix, but who knows? Oh God, anything else with the music? I don't think I can say anything until next week, really.
Final thoughts.
Shall we do final thoughts?
Mhm.
I'm gonna jump in. I'm gonna make something very fair, and this is something actually I spoke with some others. I think Calvin Dice put in his video as well. Because I was at the premiere, I was in a very different mindset approaching this film. That I can look back and say I was swept in by X, Y, and Z. That you've had this day build up. You've been on the carpet. You've got all the cast next to you. We bumped into Mo Farah buying drinks. Like, it was weird. We bumped into Hans Zimmer drunk afterwards with his family at the exits. The Bohemian Rhapsody cast was smoking cigarettes. It was such a very weird night. But seeing it there, without a shadow of doubt, will have challenged my first viewing. So when I see it tomorrow, I've not ranked it. I know we're doing the top 10 video. I've not ranked it yet. I've not thought about any of that. I'm just currently chilling out with it, processing the film in my head. Tomorrow, when I get to see it a second time, I'm going to really not switch on, because I will switch on still, but I'm very excited to go back to it to see how I feel on a second viewing, because I know what I'm like when I see films the first time. But off my initial thoughts based off Tuesday, I think this is, again, a top-tier Bond film that will be divisive without a shadow of a doubt. And even if I'm looking at I'm just I can't mull the words together, but I think this is one of the best Bond films in regards to production. You know how we spoke about Skyfall being one of the best made Bond films, but then does that qualify as one of my favorite Bond films? Potentially. We'll find out on October the 19th, but I feel off my first view of No Time to Die, I'm leaning in that path that from the filmmaking aspect and the approaches of film, I'm fully in more so than the Bond aesthetic. That being said, for Daniel Craig's farewell film, you need to deliver, because I think he's earned it. Fair enough with Spectre and Quantum, whatever they are, but he still gave us Casino Royale and Skyfall, two of the best Bond films ever made.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, for me personally, him going out on the highest of highs, okay, you're right. Timothy Dalton, he went on License to Kill. He did 2 films. So it's really hard to say he got an ending. He had a fantastic ending. He had a fantastic second film, but he was Bond for 2 years. I'm not saying there's not legacy. There's 100% legacy, but this is the end of a 15-year journey. And certainly for people our age, don't sound horrible, we would have grown up likely as this being our Bond. And for younger people, this might have been the only Bond in their lifetime. I was chatting to Jed earlier, and I forget how much younger than us he is. Sorry to call him out for his age again, but I don't even know if he was born when Dawn of the Day came out. I'm not going to actually ask that. It's horrible, but it's the end of an era, and I know actually it's true now. It's the end of an era, but I think this era had a deserved ending, and they delivered upon the ending of that era. So it's really hard to give it a fair final thought. I think I'm going to have more words to put it into perspective on Tuesday to tease that video again.
Yes. Going into my final thoughts, or do we want to bring up the comment first?
Jed's in the comments.
Sorry,
Jed.
I've given this film so many positives tonight, going over things and stuff like that. Oh, here we go. Wait a sec.
We've got confirmation at least.
Yeah, we've got confirmation.
I've given this film so many positives tonight, and that's because it's the spoiler-free version. I feel like when we get to the spoiler version, I'm going to start to go into this film, and I really am going to lay into this film because, like I said, I can list off as many positives as I want. The negatives are big. And they're very spoilery. So I can't actually go into it right now. But if you're looking at it from a spoiler-free perspective, it comes off as an incredibly good, just action film, Bond film. It hits all the points and stuff like that. It just does have those little kind of things, and then the big things as well, dragging it back towards that kind of just into the depths and stuff like that in my head. But it'll be very interesting to see what we say on that review, which is going to be once again out next week.
Yeah, I'm kind of gonna echo what you said, Tate, that there's a lot of things I need to talk about with this film, and they are quite damning things for me in many respects. There's I think all of like the big negative things I say, they're all spoiler filled, so I can't divulge. So yeah, I feel like I've come across as very positive with this, and the things that I have mentioned tonight are things that I'm positive about. And can't remember who said it. It might have been Tom Butler in one of like our earlier videos that we said, but he says there's always like good things and bad things about every Bond film, but there's some big shake-ups, things that happen in this film which I might not be okay with, and I'm going to talk about those next week. But for what it's worth, I think that this one has the energy that I've so long craved from a Bond film for so many years now. I think you could even argue I think this has a better energy to it than Skyfall and Spectre and Quantum of Solace for me, but I will acknowledge that I think Skyfall is still a better film overall than this. I think it's probably tightly written, and I just think in terms of its direction as well, it's just much more impressive to look at in terms of, like the cinematography and everything. Jesus Christ, even that opening scene from Skyfall is just, you could have that as just a short film. There are good things about this. I think it is a good final movie for Craig. It looks like he's having a lot of fun in this one. It's kind of the fun from Craig that I wanted to see for a long time. And there are some great performances all across the board. I think the action serves the film very well. And as we've mentioned, it moves at a great pace. We've seen some comments so far. Charlie Richards earlier saying that he hasn't seen it yet. He's not sure what to expect, but he's seeing it in a week or so. And from comments, it's better than he was expecting. I'd say go in with an open mind. I mean, if you've seen all the other films now, you've kind of got to watch this one as that kind of nice bookend to the Craig era of films. But as I've mentioned, I would say as the film overall, I'm sort of like positive middle of the road on this one. But there's things in this film that I'm really genuinely not okay with, and I'm suppressing it right now. So that will come next week, and I do think that is going to be the big thing. I think this could be easily one of the most divisive Bond films in a long time.
Yes.
Certainly with things that happen in the film, the ramifications of this, and obviously not going into anything, but now I'm in a similar place with everyone now. It's like, what's next? I think that's all sort of like the question that we will be answering in a later video where we pitch our own Bond film. That's going to be a really fun one to do.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's all we can say for right now. So I'm kind of middle of the road, but it does have some positives, as we mentioned. And I think the tone could throw a lot of people, whether you want to see that from a Craig Bond film, the more sort of 70s era, kind of more lighthearted in some aspects, or if you did want more of the serious stuff. But I don't know. I think there's enough in there to sort of like please both audiences with this one. I think this one's probably going to be more of a crowd pleaser overall, I think. And I think, as I mentioned at the beginning, I think people are just ready for it. It's, if nothing else, whether you like this film or not, it's still great just to see a Bond film on the big screen again. And it is a cinematic experience. So there is that. But yeah, I guess that's
I'm gonna just
no more final thoughts, I guess. Yeah, that's it.
I think we're done then.
Go watch this at the cinema. I mean,
yes,
big
screen, biggest screen that you can. I watched it in iSense. If you can get to it in IMAX, go and see it in IMAX. It's sound, music, everything. It's everything you want from a cinematic experience. So absolutely go and see that.
Although I did see on the midnight screening some poor people who thought they'd booked just a standard 2D ticket and was walking into the 4DX screening, which is the ones with the moving seats and the wind and stuff like that, for a midnight screening.
I would do that,
They just looked like they were arguing it. They were like, "Oh, we thought it was for this screening." They're like, "No, you're in this one." And they said, "Is there any room in that screen?" They're like, "No, it's booked out." And they were like, So they walked on in, and they were just kind of, "Oh God, yeah." Make sure you're booking onto the correct screening.
Absolutely. God, that would have been funny. I'd be down for that. I'd try that out. We've actually had a comment here from TA, I guess. TA, what's your favorite Bond film? We will have a video on that. We're in the process of sort of like getting together a ranking video. I guess that could be a good segue to sort of like bring up the schedule, because we are sort of, I keep saying like the last few videos, but we've got a lot more sort of like no time to die content coming out. I think next week's discussion is going to be a huge one. I mean, we've almost gone an hour and a half on this one, and this is spoiler free. Imagine what we could do for the spoiler section. The mind absolutely boggles. But we've got plenty of other stuff there, and we will have a ranking video. So I know what my favorite Bond film is. Maybe the rest of us right here know what our favorite Bond film is, but we're going to divulge that in a later video. Don't give anything away. It could all change. But yeah, so that'll do it for our spoiler-free discussion on No Time to Die. Oh, hang on. Go ahead, click it. So if you've seen the film, obviously, please no spoilers on this video. Keep everything as vague as possible. Did you enjoy? Are you kind of middle of the road? Do you have some problems with it? But once again, just to reaffirm, please no spoilers. Just be respectful of other people, essentially. There are still parts of the world that haven't got this film yet. So, just be mindful of that fact. And of course, if you're loving the Bond content, please do stick around, like, share, comment, subscribe. We might be at the most recent Bond film. We've covered all the other ones, but we're sticking around. We're loving the community and we're loving the discussions that we have. And a big thank you to everyone that's joined us today on the stream to hear us prattle on for 90 minutes on the spoiler-free. We really do appreciate it. It's always good talking Bond with you guys. And of course, if you want to find us on our social medias as well, you can find us at Cinema Savvy for our Facebook. Twitter is cinema_savvy. We're on Letterboxd now, where we can cross off No Time to Die. We've seen that. So that's letterboxd.com/cinemasavvy. And of course, if you want to pick up any merch or just browse of what we've got on offer, the link's in the description down below to our TeePublic store. And once again, just to bring it up once again, because I need to drill this in. Please don't comment any spoilers. But everyone's been very respectful. I think the Bond crowd's respectful of spoilers, and don't be that guy. Don't be that guy to do it. But that'll do it from us. I am cruising off 2 hours of sleep, so I'm going to get that good sleep tonight. It was worth it, but yeah. So once again, big thank you to everyone, and we'll catch you guys on the next video. Take care, everyone.